Welcome to another episode of Conversations with Lamp. I'm your host, James Lampkin, and my guest today is the founder of Compendious IT Solutions, Mr. Raul Jurado. Thanks for joining me.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Oh man, it's an honor. We met at my cousin's book release, Dr. Ryan Scott, and we had a really brief conversation. But from that conversation, I really was interested in getting you on a podcast. So I really thank you for doing this.
No, 100%. Really appreciate the opportunity to have a conversation with you.
First of all, how are you doing today?
Doing wonderful. It's been a busy day, but like ready to engage in this conversation and hopefully provide some enlightenment.
Now, first of all, let's start with that compendious. How did you come up with that name for the business?
Well, compendious means short and to the point, right? So it's one word. It's very direct and precise. And it's like the way I like to live my life, right? I don't like to put a lot of fluff around me. We're going to do something that's very straight, it's direct, and we go. So, Compendious IT Solutions is my company, and what we do is consulting to multiple firms within the DC area around federal contracting. So, compendious is, a lot of folks got to look up the word, right? And it's purposely, done that way, right? So when they look at it, they say, "Oh, I get it," right? So, yeah, again, you know, it's a strategic approach to being very direct, get rid of the fluff. Let's find the answer now, right? And that's kind of like what I like to do in my business.
How'd you get into the IT field?
Well, an accident. So I'm a healthcare guy. Yeah. So I retired from the Army in 2014. And while I was in the Army, I was a healthcare administrator. So I was leading facility operations within hospitals, within primary care clinics, running the insurance portion of it, working at the higher levels from an enterprise level within the Army. And then when I retired from the Army, I was looking for a job within the healthcare field. And I got a call from a very good friend of mine. And he basically told me, he said, "Hey, look, there's a gentleman looking for someone like you. But you got to go have a conversation with them and see what happens." So I went to a gentleman by the name of Tony Jimenez, the CEO for Microtech, and I had a conversation with him. I think it was a 1 hour interview, and I think I said my name, and I think I said I like pizza, and he talked for the rest of the hour, and then the next day I had this offer that I couldn't refuse. Right? It was and I was just like, all right, let's go. So I got into this field and just like, can I curse on here or no?
Yeah, you can say whatever you want.
All right, good. So like I tell people, it's like I can barely spell IT, but I sell the shit out of it, right? So and that's so I got to the sales field, and that's essentially where I'm at, right? So I teach folks how to grow their businesses, right? How to find opportunities within the federal space, government, how to navigate that world, and then how to find success, right? Because it's and as we kind of get into it, I'll kind of explain some things. But it's a very unique world. It's not like it's slow. It's very pointed, and it's all about your networks, who you interact with, right? And that's what kind of drives success in this world. So the IT portion of it, like you asked me, right? Is like it's almost secondary. So the folks who drive the government and want these solutions are ultimately want the right solution, right? But they also want it from the right people. Because when you look at IT, right, there's some niche type of skill sets, if you will, right? But at the end of the day, multiple companies provide the same service. At the end of the day, the folks who are buying these services want to make sure that they got confidence somebody can execute it, right? Want to make sure that the people that they want to work with are good people, right? Because some of these contracts are like 5 years, 10 years.
Mm.
If you can't stand somebody going into it, right? Like, how am I going to spend the next 5 years dealing with this individual? I'm kind of getting off track here, but the bottom line is that's how I got an ITA. Retiring, I was going to stay healthcare, got a job offer, discovered this world. I like this world, and I did well.
You said you had to you could sell IT. How did you get the skills to sell IT? Because your background was healthcare.
Well, again, everything in sales, right, is about connecting with folks,
Mm,
right? So again, somebody. So now I'm at this point in my career, I'm smart enough to understand basic concepts of IT, right? But even more so, I know people that do it and do it well. So if I talk to you, for instance, and you want to buy something in cybersecurity, whether it's, you know, uh, uh, an ATO process, a risk-free management, you know, authority to operate, right? Not a lot of people understand what that is, but I can kind of click it. And then I know who does that well. If you're looking at just, telecom, broadband, Wi-Fi, DAS systems, I understand those concepts and I know the people that do it well. So you tell me you have a need, and whatever that need is in the IT space, I go find best in class.
mm,
Bring those folks to the table, right? And then again, my value is my relationship with the customer. So I understand the customer, I understand what he wants, I understand what he needs. I bring in that, I prepare my customers to go into that environment, right? With the government guy, tell them, hey, this guy likes X, he dislikes Y. We're going to go approach him this way. If he says he likes this, you say yes. If he says he doesn't like this, you say you don't like that either, right? And and so when I say that, right, you look into the political space we're in right now, right?
hmm
Very divided. But you can't go into the business environment picking a side. If you
mm,
want to do business, right? Because I like and don't like certain things, right?
hmm
But I know how to walk through a conversation where I'm not going to offend anybody. And if you want to tell me some crazy, um, belief that you support, that's on you. I'm not going to change your mind. What I'm here to do is make sure that, hey, you're trying to buy a service. This is what I'm going to bring to you.
Did you take any type of like IT basic courses or you just went straight into it?
I have no IT training. So, like, if you got an IT problem and you call me, I'm going to tell you to reboot your computer. That's as far as my IT strengths go, right? But again, it's like I've got some pretty heavy companies, and I can walk in somebody. And so look, um, everything's personality driven. And there's some folks who are very smart in IT, very like they can tell you put the green wire here, the red wire here, black wire here, bam, 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 and all that good stuff. I can't tell you that, right? All I do is I bridge the want with the folks who can scratch the itch, if you will. Right?
hmm
So I bring them together. I understand what the customer wants to buy. I understand what the guy who wants to sell to the government wants to provide. I can walk through a conversation, and what I do really before I go do any conversation, there's a lot of preparation work that goes into it. I just don't walk into a meeting and say, okay, let's go walk in. He wants to buy telephones, right?
hmm
Because you look at the range of telephones, you got cell phones, you got iPhones, you got Droids, you got fold ups, you got freaking, wire into the freaking, you got all this different. You got to know what he wants. Right. So I bring the guy that he truly wants and I make sure that they're able to have the conversation. But again, I know high level, but what I do is I make sure the conversation goes smooth. And I know what the customer wants before I bring in the guy who wants to sell to the government, right?
hmm
And so when I facilitate the conversation. So before I go into any meeting, right, I provide my customers, you know, background on the opportunity in terms of what the government wants to buy, background about the individual that we're trying to sell to. And furthermore, like a lot of people go into meetings and they walk out of meetings and say, "Oh, that was a great meeting. That was a great meeting." Like, but what are you using to define what a great meeting is, right? So there's certain metrics or certain things like, okay, let's define what success means before we, right? Did we get X information? Did we get whatever that is, right? But you've got to define within any engagement, right? What you want out of that, right? Because me and you could have a conversation right now, right? And what do you call it? At the end of it, did you get what you wanted? Did you know what you wanted before you came into this conversation, right? You
Mm.
drive it there, right? Because at the end of this podcast here, right, we're gonna hang up the phone. You're gonna say, "Man, that was a great freaking podcast," or "That was the worst," right? But what did you measure, right? What's your basis of measure? And did you have the basis of measure before you got into this podcast, right? Because
Mm.
that's what you've got to kind of define. Like, how do you? Because there's a lot of podcasts out there, right?
Right.
Right. And when we first talked, you kind of told me, "Hey, this is what we want to do." I said, "Okay, I'll support." Right. But at the end of every podcast that you have, right, you got to look at yourself and say, "Man, this is going to be a good one. This is going to be a bad one." Right. But you got to go in knowing what good and bad is going in. Right. What's this guy? What do I expect to hear from this guy? What do I want to hear from this guy? What's the message I want to bring to my audience? Right. And then once you define that, right, then what are the questions I need to ask to get to that end state?
Mm.
That's just business 101, right? It's like, okay, look, we got to figure out at the end of the day, what do you need and what can I provide and how can we bring it together? But if you
Let's go
meet,
to the. Oh,
yeah,
I'm
go ahead.
sorry. Go ahead. I'm
No, no,
sorry. I
no, no,
interrupted
go
your
ahead,
thought.
go ahead, go ahead.
No, no, because I want you to finish your thought.
Yeah, so at the end, like if you can't meet that, right, you're missing. And it's like just like it's a full miss. You wanted X and we brought in Y, and there's just no connection. It's a waste of time.
Yeah.
And in my business, I can't do that. I can't bring in somebody and waste of time. I got to hit a home run every time. So before I bring in a customer to see or my customer to a government official, I got to know what the government official wants, and I got to be able to tell my customers who I bring in, this is what you need to sell, because he's not interested in a Mercedes Benz. He wants an SUV, right, or whatever it is, right? The comparison. But you got to make sure you're on track. And before you go in there, you got to have a plan. But that's just life. That applies to everything.
When you say you have to hit a home run every time, does that put a lot of pressure on you?
It's 100% pressure. Like when you're in your own business, it's pressure all day.
Mm.
It's pressure all day, right? Because hey, look, because it's very easy for someone to tell you, hey, look, you missed the mark, and you could be killing it all year long, right? You go into one meeting, you blow it, which they prioritize as very important for the company. You blow that. It doesn't matter what you did yesterday, right? So when you strike out and you really need a base hit or you really need that home run, you're done. So you got to understand, like, for me, in terms of what I'm doing, I got to make sure, like, I tell my son works for me. And every week I tell him, hey, look, we got to make sure that our customers on Friday night feel like, oh man, those guys are value to us. They're doing something for us. Every day we have to have a touch point that they say, oh man, whether it's an email, whether it's an introduction, whether it's an opportunity, whatever that thing is, right? Because you always got to provide, you always got to demonstrate your value. So like you got to understand what playing field, where you're playing at, right? So where do you want to play? What field do you want to play on? You want to be on a T-ball baseball field, right? You want to be in the major leagues
Mm.
because the difference between a T-ball field and the major leagues are night and day. And you got to make a decision, where do you want to participate? Because if you're going to play in the major leagues, there's a lot of things that go into it. If you're going to play in T-ball, you got to do is show up and be there, right?
Yeah, that's a hell of a way to put it.
Yeah, yes. And then so that's the reality. You got to make a decision. Where do you want to play? Because there's a lot of different individuals just like you want to play at that level, right?
What's it like to have your son work for you? Because you did, because most people don't have that opportunity to have family. So it sounds like you've established something not only for yourself, but your family as well.
Well, that's what life's about, right? It's about developing your family, growing with your family, building something, that's closest to you, right? Like my kids are the most important thing to me in my life, right? If they're successful, I'm successful. But I got some good friends who've done very well in their careers, and some of them started very early in their careers because their fathers brought them into this environment, taught them, and then they succeeded.
Mm,
So I've used those models to do the same with my kids. Well, my son's 25 years old, and he can walk into a room and he can drive conversations. He can figure out how to build those networks. He can talk, and he's more technical than I. So he can talk IT, right?
hmm
And he understands how to work the deals. So I'm dealing with billion-dollar companies trying to negotiate with them on a contract. And I send my proposal to my son, say, review this before I send it to X. And he looks at it and he gives me his opinion. I'm like, man, I didn't think about that. Right. But at 25, he's able to get that because I take him into all the meetings. Right. And when he goes in, he holds his own. And that for me is like, I'm 54. Right. We never know when we're going to go. But I know right now that if I happen to fade off tomorrow or a week or years, whatever, he's going to be able to step in and go. And
Mm,
that's to me, that's the ultimate purpose in life, right? Is to make sure there's a constant flow of success within the family.
wow. Let's talk. Speaking, we're gonna stay on family. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Los Angeles, California. Uh, Spent my first 18 years of my life there, and then joined the Army in 1989, and then just been on the run since.
What made you join the military?
I had nowhere else to go.
Mm.
Just like most folks, we're troubled youth, they call us, right? I got kicked out of. So I tell folks I went to like five different high schools, and my parents never moved once, right? I went to three different middle schools. My parents never moved. I
Wow.
say, what do you call it? The schools were telling me, hey, you're such a talent and such a good guy. We want you to go share your skill sets with with other schools and areas. But that wasn't the case, right? They're like, hey, get them out of here, go there. Right? Yeah. So as a young guy, I was, I'd gotten a lot of trouble. And then the
Mm.
day was like, okay, where do I go? And so I joined the army in '89, which is kind of a funny story how that happened. But folks were like, "Hey, how's it going to survive in the army if you can't even, you know?" And I really I loved the army from the day when I joined. You know, it was for me.
What was your job?
So when I first came in, I was a legal guy, right? So I was basically a glorified paralegal. And but my first unit was 464 armor, and we went to Desert Storm. And
Wow.
we're like, 1 year into the army, I'm sitting in freaking Saudi Arabia in the middle of nowhere. And there's a lot of stories behind that. But here I am. And, we go into battle and all that good stuff and they come back home. But there was a sense of purpose. There were great leaders I was introduced to. And it was the mindset at 19 years old that, hey, look, man, you may die like today. I know a lot of people don't understand that. Like with all this stuff going on with Iran right now, it's like you got people on the front line, young kids, right? And they got to deal with the realization that they may die tomorrow. Right? And they're like 18, 19, 20 years old. And everyone asks, like, man, why are you guys kind of a little screwed up, right? Because at 19, we're writing wills, right?
Dang.
We're kind of thinking like, oh man, and you just never know, right? And so with that, that's kind of like you survive those experiences. And I'm kind of going off, track, but bottom line is, uh, it produces um, yeah, I don't know for a lot of folks, but for me, it created this desire to be successful because I didn't want to die in the battlefield. You
Mm.
So
But even with that mindset, not wanting to die, unfortunately, you can't control it. How did you make or did you make peace with that?
I don't think, I got a lot of good buddies that we still keep in contact after 35 years. And I went back to Iraq in 04, 05.
Mm,
And like a lot of us, I don't think we really truly talk about it, right? Um, and I think that's why we've got, and I was very fortunate. I mean, I've seen a lot of bad stuff, but I didn't see, I wasn't kicking down doors. I didn't see my buddy get shot and killed and all this other good stuff, right?
mm,
And it's like, there's a certain point in your life you're not ready for that, right? Like I look at my kids. My kids are young; they're not ready for that, right? I mean, no matter. And I think about what I had to prepare myself at 19 and where they're at, and I'm like, sheesh, my kids would never survive that, right?
yeah.
But we had to. So at the end of it, we all cope in our own certain ways, right?
Hmm.
Some of us drink a little bit more. Some of us don't make it, right? A lot of, I think there's like 22 veterans that kill themselves a day. I think,
Wow.
yeah, it's a lot of people, right? Because it's intense. And then the things you see are not normal. It's not like, and you got to come home, you got to cope with that. And some folks cope with it very well and just kind of like, okay, what I saw is behind me, let's move forward. And other folks, live and breathe with that 24/7.
Hmm. Well, for all of that, with you experiencing so much at an early age in the military, how did you even make the decision to stay? Because it's like, man, that you got introduced right off the bat how rough it was going to be.
But again, I love the military.
Okay.
And what I loved about it was this environment that was all about creating or everything was motivated by success, making the next rank, getting the next position, right? So if you did it right, and I think I did it right, um, you were always competing against all your fellow soldiers because you wanted to be that sergeant, right? So I made staff sergeant in 5.5 years, right? Which
Wow.
is 6, which is very quick up rank. And then, I got commissioned. I guess, I guess it was 11 years after I joined, but I got commissioned, so I was considered a Mustang.
Mm,
I was always like trying to figure out how to get to that next level, right? And as an officer, as a healthcare guy, how do I put myself in position to kind of, outdo my fellow soldiers, right? How do I position myself? So everything was based on doing the work and creating an image, creating, a reputation that folks would want to work with you and want to put you out and recommend you for that next higher job, that next higher rank.
mm,
That's what I loved about the Army. It was like I love to compete. I love to play football. I love to, as a kid, I wrestled football, all that good stuff, growing up. And so I was always competitive. And so then going into the military, it was always competitive. And that's what kept me in the running so long because I always wanted to just compete, 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 compete. And it's much like what I'm doing now.
mm,
Like there's 1,000 consultants out there. And one of the things I tell my clients, like, hey, you got 2 week freaking exit. We're going to do a 12-month contract, but no, if you don't like what I'm doing, you can fire me in 2 months or 2 weeks.
damn.
And like, if you don't like what I'm doing, because I know I'm better than all those guys out there. I know
Mm,
that what you got, the service I'm going to provide you, you're not going to find anywhere else. When you ask me a question, I'm going to find you the right answer, right? I'm going to do everything I can to get you somewhere. And so that mindset from the time I was 19, competing with all this good stuff, continues today, right? Like you want something, I'm going to get it for you. And if I fail you, fire me. That's your right,
mm.
fire me, right? Because then that puts all the pressure on me.
So you like that pressure?
I love the pressure. Absolutely. You got to have it, man. Because without the pressure, what do you? You're like the stress for a lot of folks is just like a lot, right? But for me, I like stress. I like to wake up in the morning and say, man, right? I got to get this done. I got to get this done. Like yesterday, I had a meeting, and all of a sudden, I had 22 things to do, and I thought I only had two. It was like,
Mm,
boom, I got to get through this. I got to get through this. And it's high level things that we're addressing, but I'm okay with that pressure. I'm not going to crack, right? It's like, yeah,
mm.
just run.
Could you even imagine? I mean, you seem so high intense, and you just said you love stress, which is pretty fascinating to me. Could you even imagine yourself working a 9 to 5?
Well, look, so I've worked for large corporations, I worked for small businesses, right? But it wasn't 9 to 5. But so when I retired from the army, I told one of my mentors, I said, "Man, no, I can go teach. I'm just gonna do the teaching thing and go home." He looked at me. It's like, "Hey, Raul, you can't do that." I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "You just can't." He says, your palate is just too expansive, if you will. You've lived all over the world. You've done this. You've done that. You can't go back to living a normal life. Like, well, I don't want to say a normal life, but you just can't go back and just be mediocre. You
Mm,
always want to challenge yourself just because of the life you've lived. And probably, one of the greatest, comments and insights that he provided me is like, hey, look, like, can I just go do and just be like, okay, I'm just going to do this, right? But I don't think there's any fun in that, right? Like, I got to make sure, like I don't have an employee. I don't have anybody like, I got to check into right now. I've got customers and they got to pay me monthly for the services I provide. But at any given day, they can tell me, hey, thank you. We don't need your services anymore, right? And so the pressure is on me to make sure those people are always on and they're happy and they're satisfied with the services I'm providing. So again, I appreciate that I sleep 4 hours a night, you know.
wow.
So what do you guys? Yeah, so I'm up in the morning, right? And my girlfriend thinks I'm crazy, right? She's out by 10. Next thing you know, I'm not asleep till 2. But no, at 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm up.
You said you watch sports, right?
Yeah, I do, but not as intensely as I used to.
The reason I asked, I'm sure you're familiar with Shannon Sharp,
Hmm.
and he made a statement that in order to be great, there is no work-life balance. What do you say to that?
I agree, right? And you gotta like, so I grew up in Los Angeles, love the Lakers. Shaq, Kobe, getting this disagreement. I was a Shaq guy, I wasn't a Kobe guy. I didn't like Kobe, man. I thought Kobe was just like an arrogant kid, right? So I just happened to be in LA the day that he passed away, right? I
Mm,
was staying at a hotel on the beach. We're leaving. It was a foggy morning. And as we're leaving to go to the airport, someone tells me, yeah, Kobe just got killed, right? So like I just it like Kobe didn't really like, I was like, all right. And then after he passed, I started watching some of the interviews that he did, right? Started listening to it. And Kobe, like to mimic what Kobe did, like the amount of discipline, the amount of desire, the amount of fucking intelligence, the amount of like everything. Kobe was like beyond normal. I mean,
mm,
he was just an incredible individual. Just like to me, it's like to get to Kobe level is like, man, you got to give up everything, 100% focused, right? So you made a point earlier, right? You got to make a decision on how much you want to give. I can never be in Kobe's. I can never be a Kobe, right? Because that guy operated at a level that what do you call it, is beyond human to me.
mm,
He got on that court and he freaking like shot like 1,000 freaking free throws, whatever it was for that day, right? Story of him, right? He's, going to the gym at 4 o'clock in the morning, right? While they're on the road, and all his teammates are coming in from the bar, right?
mm,
He's going out to go do the things. He was a constant freaking like the consummate professional. He studied his appointments or his opponents. He knew his opponents. He knew their habits. He knew everything that they did. He knew whether they like to drive right, drive left, but he knew everything about it when he got on the court. He out he was mentally stronger that he just outplayed these guys from a mental perspective. And again, that is hard to get there. If I could get 50% of where Kobe's at, man, that's a good day, right?
mm.
Because that dude was incredible. right?
I mean, you said you only sleep in 4 hours, so it sounds like you put a lot of work in.
Oh, 100%, right? And that's what I'm going. I go, 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 right? And that's just it. But you got to make a decision, like I said earlier. Do you want to play T-ball or do you want to play major leagues? And you got to
Mm,
make a decision where you want to go because it's your decision only. If you want to be the best, you got to figure out, hey, and there's like a multitude of examples out there of what that means, right? Or examples of that of people that are doing it. Like people don't get to these top levels on accident, right? What's the saying is like the harder you work, the better luck you have, right?
mm,
Not about luck, right? It's about you got to go out there and you got to drive, 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 drive. We had to postpone this podcast for 2.5 hours, whatever it was, because
mhm,
I had to go to one event, meet with some folks. I ended up running into somebody. Hey, I got to interact with them. Came across town, had to interact with some folks I just signed some paperwork with. So I had to have a conversation with them. I met a gentleman in there. I got freaking got you got to go, and then it's like, okay, how did I get here, right?
right.
So it's like you got to figure out how much work do you want to put in. And like, because you got to define where you want to be. Everybody wants to be in a mansion. Everybody wants to drive a fancy car. Everybody wants to wear, the fancy clothes and have the beautiful girl and all that good stuff, right? Right. But, it's like you got to put in the work. And at the end of the day, you're going to understand that that's all secondary. All the material stuff is secondary, right?
Mm,
That's where you go back to the family. I have a great appreciation of developing my son that he's at 25 and he can outrun a bunch of 40-year-olds out here who've been in the business for, 20 years. My
mm,
son can have the conversations with billion-dollar companies and walk in there and represent us and really hit the key points. He can go out there and do some things, right? In terms of networking and establishing those relationships. That's what's important to me, right?
mm.
Material stuff, it'll come. But it's like, for what?
When did you make that decision that you wanted to play in the major leagues?
Well, I mean, when I think I was so like, I think Obama says like, all your life you're intimidated about walking those rooms, right? And then you walk in those rooms and you're at those levels and you realize you look to your left and your right, like, man, there's nobody, none of these guys are that special. They just happen to have these titles, they just happen to have these positions and they're where they're at. I worked for a large corporation one time. I was only Latino in the corporate, office at the time. $4 billion annual revenue, right? So heavy hitters. And I walk in and I'm briefing these guys. I just won a lot of money for these guys. And mid brief, I need water. So I say, hey, I'm a little parched. Is there water in here? Right? Parched. Use parched, right? So I need water. And four people got off the table, went, and I had 4 bottles of water in front of me. And the CEO of the company is sitting across me. He's looking at me. I'm looking at him. He's like, who the hell is this guy, man? I didn't say anything. I was like, hey, thank you, thank you, thank you. But when I walked out of that thing, I kind of smiled to myself. I was like, man, kind of made it. I'm there playing with these players, right? And these are heavy hitters, right? And so, I love to compete, right? And so let me you may have to edit this a little bit.
No, we
But
good.
I grew up in LA, right, where there's social economic disparities between communities. And we all had to go to the same school. So the rich kids in the hills and below Whittier Boulevard with all the poor kids. So when we went in there, we were treated differently from the time we
Mhm,
were young all the way up, right? And I despise that. I really hated that, right? Because I knew I was better than these guys, better freaking academically, I was better athletically. I could freaking navigate systems, right? But they kicked me out of all these schools, right? And I was always a bad guy. I was always the guy that, and it just like frustrated me because you know what? My mistake was blown out in proportion where other people's mistakes were like, oh, it's okay, go.
mm,
And so the disparities between the two communities, even though we're combined, right? We're coming on what they used to call the burrito bus, right? So we get bused into the school, you know, near the higher end folks, and it was a burrito bus. So we wouldn't get on the bus. We'd walk all the way home 3.5 miles, right? Because we didn't want to get on the bus and be associated with, you know, wetbacks and and all this other shit, right? So that's what we
Mm.
experienced young. So that kind of drove me a little bit, right? Wanted to, and it's still like relevant today, right? You get in these communities, right, and you see what's happening with this administration. Again, it's kind of like they're saying DEI is bad and all this, right? And to me, it's like it's not DEI, man. We're competing with you, and now
Mm.
you have to compete with us. Now you're realizing, right? You got to understand where you are in terms of competition. Where you playing? So that's my mindset is like, hey, look, I'm going to succeed. You're not going to tell me I'm not good enough to play here because of my name, because of what I look like, right? So that's been kind of a driver for me.
You know what? I'm actually glad that you mentioned that because I did want to touch on that because you I feel like you answer this for me. Did you have a lot of examples in like with your background and your heritage? It doesn't sound like you had a lot of examples that you could follow. Is that a correct statement?
No,
For
I
the
think
IT portion.
no. Well, no, no, no. I think there's a lot of examples out there in terms of
Okay.
that
Okay.
are doing great things, right? But yeah, a lot of. So my father passed away about 2 years ago. He was a speech therapist. He had multiple companies. He came from a very, 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 very poor, environment. Right, most of my uncles died of heroin overdoses and just bad stories. Right, my father was the youngest out of everybody. He decided, hey, I'm going to go to college. Right, after being in trouble with the law and all kinds of stuff. Right, he went to college. He kind of grew and. Like, and me to you, to be honest, I didn't meet him until I was 15. But when I met him, he was at a place of like, man, okay, I'm moving up in the world. It just happened to catch him as he was kind of gaining momentum in his life.
Mm.
So he really guided me, right? But there's a lot of people like in um like so let me just back up and just say your ethnicity, your race, your religion, all this stuff doesn't really define your outcome, right? So there's no like in what do you call it? So you're not a bad person because you're this. You're not a good person because you're this, right? Again, you drive um, your own status in life, right? So it's not about what you look like and who you are because there's people that succeed and there's people that fail that look like all of us. Again, you got to make a decision. And, again, I don't believe like here in the United States, like if you want to make it, you're going to make it, right? If you want to compete, you're going to compete, right? Regardless of where you come from. However, there are barriers, right? And you got to recognize those barriers and you got to understand, like, okay, what do you do with those barriers? And a barrier is exactly as it's defined, it's meant to stop you,
Mm.
right? And really, the barriers I think that exist are internal to a lot of people, they're psychological, right? Because there's truly not like, yeah, there's some bad people out there, and you can talk about racism, you can talk about just like economic freaking discriminators, you can talk about people with money versus people with not money, right? But if you want it bad enough, you're gonna figure out how to freaking excel, right? And you're gonna get there. But again, given the Kobe example, how much are you willing to sacrifice your life to get there to be the best of the best? Right? And that's where I'm kind of at. So yes, these disparities and all those different things exist, and it kind of motivates me because in my communities, I saw it as, oh, sheesh, they don't want us to go to these birthday parties. They don't want us to go to this thing, right? We're not invited to this. We didn't make first team because of X, Y, and Z. But at the end of it, right, you start to realize all that stuff starts to crumble because with the right discipline, the right skill sets, the right network, you're going to overcome that, right? And so, yeah, I mean, going off on a tangent, but
No, no, no. I mean, this is a good subject. This is good. This is good.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's like if you're going to go, you're going to go, but you can't blame it. You can't blame your failure or anything but yourself, right? Because you let the barrier be the barrier. That was your stopping point.
When you was there age when you knew like I could overcome any barrier or obstacle that's thrown at me?
I mean, to this day, I don't know, right? But when it's in front of me, I gotta observe it. I gotta do a little bit of evaluation in terms of how I overcome it and go. Because hey, look, running your own business is tough. Like I told you earlier, man, I got to figure out, hey, how am I, right? Am I getting blocked out? Are people out there talking and saying, hey, man, don't do business with this guy? People are going to I just had an experience 2 weeks ago, man. $1 billion company, multi-billion-dollar company. I go in there and I give them an avenue of approach where there's an opportunity for them to make a lot of money. They bring me in, they tell me, hey, yeah, yeah, da da da, we want to bring you on as a consultant, we want to pay X amount of dollars. Tell us your value and why we should pay you that. I can give them everything. 1 week goes by, I don't hear anything from them. 2 weeks go by, I don't hear anything from them. Right? I get a phone call. Hey, that guy you introduced me to and the people that we wanted to go see, they're now trying to hit everything that you gave them. Right? And I'm like, what the hell? It's a, you know, 1.5 million or $1.4 billion company. I'm a two-man company. And you're taking everything I gave you and you're trying to just, basically, what do I do with that, right? The guy, the guy who kind of led that initiative to kind of screwed himself because he doesn't have the talent to do what I do. So he goes in there and he tries to operate with all the information I got, and he gets a Heisman for everybody. In fact, they had a meeting last week, told me, Howard, guess
Mm,
what? Here I come in. Now I got my cape on, and hey, you guys failed. Again, this is what I provide you. Now I can get emotional about it and tell, hey, you're a bad guy because you took all my leads and you took advantage of me, right? But now I'm gonna go back in. Now my rate's higher,
mm,
right?
wow.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, now what do you guys want to do? You guys fell on your face. What do you want to do? So again, it's like we're gonna have barriers every day. What do? I can sit back and I can go away and I can cry and like, oh my God, they took everything I gave them and ran away and they're not going to pay me for the information I gave them. Or I can work behind the scenes.
Mm.
That kind of had a little bit to do with them filming.
How do you keep your composure in those situations? Because we're not talking about a few dollars. We talking about you talking about a company you said worth billions of dollars. So I'm sure that was a big financial deal.
Everything's about emotional intelligence, right?
Hmm.
But again, um, I leverage a lot of people because in my mind I'm already world's on fire. But I reach out to people with, I got a lot of mentors out there. And I call them and they provide me the guidance to kind of help me kind of reason through this. So, okay, what are you going to do? And they listen to me, and man, I can go over there and I'm going to just blow up and another thing. Okay, that's a good approach, but have you ever considered this? So, I've got a network of folks, great people that I can call. And regardless if I'm dealing with a relationship, if I'm dealing with a business, if I'm dealing with whatever I'm dealing with, my kids, I got people I can call and who've already been through some of this, right? And they provide me some insights, and I got to take that information. I got to run through it, decipher it, and kind of come out with a plan, right? So again, it's like your network's always important.
Mm,
It's like I'm very blessed to have a lot of folks I can get on the phone right now. It doesn't matter what time at night I can call, and they'll pick up and they'll say, "Man, you good?" I say, "I got this issue," and I blow up, boom, 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 and they're like, "Dude, calm down." I like to say, "Call me in the morning." And then I call them in the morning, say, okay, you good? So yeah. All right, let's talk about it. It's like, okay. And so they, my energy and I'm an emotional type guy. They just like, it's not that exciting. Here's what you need to do. Boom, boom, boom. And then I take their advice and I run with it because now, you know, it's a matter of getting the right mindset and putting together a solution to go to overcome those things.
You've mentioned network a couple of times. Do you think people understand how important networking is?
Well, there's like a superficial definition of it, right? Let's go out there and shake hands and let's go meet everybody. No, 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 right? That's networking, right? Let's go network. So when I was leaving the army, everyone was talking, oh, got network. And it used to be like that terminology used to frustrate me because it just meant like it was just stupid to me, you know? And but the realization of what a true network is, right? Again, is building a foundation, building a community around you that you're going to take care of each other and you're going to want. And it's about mutual trust, mutual ambitions, mutual, beliefs, mutual, just a lot of things. And what do you got? You don't necessarily need to agree with folks, but bottom line is, if something goes right, something goes wrong, you can kind of depend on some people and they're going to give you the right insight, right? So, like I got folks right now politically sit on both sides of the aisle, right? But we've got a common, uh, I don't know what the terminology is, but we got a common ground that we got common values, right? Common beliefs, right? Despite where we sit, we can come in and say, okay, look, we both, we all love our family, we all want to be successful, we all want to be this, right? And just different positions in terms of how we get there. But again, I've got a group of folks that, regardless of where they sit, regardless of what I believe and they believe, right? We all kind of want to be successful and we're all going to help each other. So again, it's like for me, the folks that I call have accomplished a lot in their lives, right? So when you create your network, right? It's not about going out, shaking hands, kissing babies, and now I can walk into a bar and everybody knows my name and that's success. That's not success, right? Having the right people within that network that we that are there to help you grow, that want to see you successful, are going to be there with you, right? You're going to simultaneously return the same to them, right? They're going to call you and say, hey, man, hey, I got this issue. How do I get through this? And you got to be there for them. And
Mm,
it's that community. And that's what networking is. It's building a community. That network is equal to community, right? And that's what you're building. You're building a community versus a network, right? So when you build that community of good folks around you, right, you're going to have good outcomes.
mm,
You build a community of bad folks around you, you're going to have the outcomes that you expect, right? And so that's kind of like what I try to preach to some of the young guys I engage with, right? Kind of mentor a lot of folks as well. Um, you're young, you want to be a tough guy and all this other good stuff. So you want to hang out with other tough guys, and something goes down, you want, at the end of the day, you do the math, right? You know, what are the outcomes? What are the benefits of it?
mm.
Right? Everyone thinks you're a tough guy. Okay, great. It's like I remember when I was a kid, people were coming out of jail. We used to look up to like, oh man, he went to jail. Oh man, that guy's a. And that was what we kind of freaking like, in our lives. Said, man, that's success. Right?
Mm,
So that's what drives you, right? And you don't know what you know until you know, right? You got to get out in the world. That's why I love about the Army. I've been all over the world and I've seen different versions of success,
mm,
different versions of just like what right looks like. But when you're in a small community and you're kind of bubbled in there and success to you is doing time, and that's where you freaking go, right?
yeah.
That's what I'm saying. That network, the community is very important. And you always got to set up a community that's higher than where you're at. All right.
When you say a community's higher than where you at, explain that.
Well, folks who are successful, folks who have done well,
Mm.
you got to be able to ask somebody, right? Like, so you're trying to start a business, right? And you want to learn about setting up the financial infrastructure. You want to go to a guy who's bankrupt 10 companies, or do you want to have a guy who's sold and continues to build different companies, right? Who are you going to go to? And that's just the basic, one-on-one of life. Who are you going to friggin' lean on? And just because they're great to hang out with and great to drink with doesn't mean there's like, and philosophically they can tell you all this great stuff, but they don't know how to operationalize it. They don't know how to. So you got to find the people that have been doing well. And it's not necessarily like, it's like, um, and that's where race, religion, all that stuff is irrelevant,
Mm,
right? Because, what I've learned over the life is like, it's like people are people, right? We all kind of want the same things, right? We all go about differently in terms of attaining it. But I mean, I see things that are out there that kind of puzzle me, right? Because you look a certain way, you're just, people try to devalue you.
mm,
And day, no matter what you look like, no matter where you're at, ultimately, there's only so many. I think there's like 10 to 12 personalities in this world, right? So regardless of what culture you're in, right, you're going to fit in this window, right? You're going to be extremely narcissistic, or you're going to be extremely giving. Where do you sit in that place, right? How do you react and all that good stuff?
you,
So, human behaviors don't, you know, are not that, there's not like, there's not that many anomalies out there, right? There's not that many unique individuals are so freaking like you fit in a certain you sit in certain like packages. You can say, okay, you're this type, you're this type, you're this type, right? So when you deal with people, you got to understand where do they sit, and then how do you interact with them. But you can't interact with a guy who's completely narcissist, only cares about himself, the same way you interact with someone who's totally giving and wants to give everything away to everybody, right?
mm,
To save the world, and then you got things in between.
mm,
So when you're dealing with people, you got to figure out where they're at. And then with each one of those folks, you got to know how to interact with them. So it's a lot out there, man. And so there's psychological, man. I mean, there's so many different things, man, that afford interactions with folks.
mm. Before we started recording, you was telling me that you're a philanthropist. That's very important to you.
You
I
know,
wanted you to talk about why that's important to you.
well, look, man, you got to take care of people, right? I mean, look, you can't do it all for yourself. For what? What's the value in that? Like I know a gentleman that I worked for before, and he's got all the greatest things in the world, beautiful house, beautiful car, but he's miserable,
Mm,
right? He's like I had a deal last week, and I called Buddy. I said, "Hey, should I call him?" And he paused. I said, "That's enough for me, right?
wow.
It's not what he got trustworthy, but he's made millions upon millions of dollars, but he's got no one that he can lean on, nobody that he can call a true friend,
Damn.
right?" So it's like again, it's like for me, I rather the opposite. I rather, do my best to take care of people, help people grow. Because at the end, man, no one, so I just became a grandfather 7 months ago. My grandson's here, right? And there's always uh, what's that uh, phrase? It's like something around planting a seed that you're not going to be able to sit under the tree, right? Whatever, sit the shade, you're not gonna be able to sit the shade, whatever the hell thing is, right? But I didn't realize that till now, right? So I got my grandson in 7 months. So now I've got to plant the seed. I got to make sure that he's got a tree that he can sit under and get the shade, right? That I will
Mm,
never be able to sit under. So I'm creating a world that's going to benefit him, right? And that's my grandson. But simultaneously, there's a lot of people out there that I know and I love. I want to make sure I do the same. And if I can help them, I'm going to help them. If they don't want help, then I can't help them.
mm,
That's the other thing, right? You can't save the world. And if people want to run with you, you can run with them. They show up and they want to do it and they're ambitious and they want to go. I'll walk with them all day. But if I throw my hand, you ask me for help and I throw it out and say, okay, let's go, let's go, let's go. And then you just don't follow through. I don't have the desire to help you anymore.
mm,
Philanthropy is, hey, if you want to do well, I'm going to help you. If I can help you grow, if I can provide you insight, if I can mentor you, I mean, there's no better success than to see somebody that you've helped grow and do well, right? That's great. No money in the bank, any of that good stuff. But
Right.
again, like what I'll tell you, people are takers, and people will always take. You offer something, they're going to take, and they're going to take, and they're going to take, and they're going to take. You got to recognize it, right? So, one of my best phrases, I don't give away free chicken, right? And like, there's a lot of people want free chicken all the time, right? And I'll give it to you once, and after that, it's like, okay, done.
I'm gonna have to use that.
I had a meeting with a gentleman today. I've known him for 12 years. And he invited me out for lunch, and we sat there, we talked, and he knows I got a business, he's got a business, and basically he wanted free chicken. Well, work for me, and I'll pay you when we win something.
Mm,
I'm going to put 6 months into something, and what if you can't win? How do I get reimbursed for that?
wow. Yeah.
I'm investing my time, and if you can't win, why am I to suck it? Why am I to take all the risk?
Mm,
Right? So again, I take care of people. I take care of a lot of people. It's very important to me. But if you don't want to, if you got no interest, and I'm just talking to the air, then we're done. Have a good day.
mm,
Right?
yeah. I want to end it with this. How do you want your legacy defined?
Hmm. I don't think about that. I don't really have an interest in defining anything.
Mm,
I am who I am. And at the end of the day, right, what I know is like when you die and you fade away. And there's very few people who are able to leave a legacy that's like, that hits the history books, right? Very few. Think of all the millions of people who've lived on this earth. Majority of people die, and 90 days later, 90 minutes later after they bury you, you're done, right? And it is sad, but that is just life, right? There's a lot of people I've known in my life who are no longer here, right? And it's just like their lives were their lives, they lived them, and now they're gone. And there's
mm,
a lot of people who are just kind of like, oh.
mm,
And again, that's like 99% of us. Is 1% that, they got the sculptures, they got you know, the name in the history book, but like majority of us, we come and we go, and nobody fucking remembers who we are.
well, well, I'll say this from what I gathered from this conversation. It would be hard for me to say you won't have a. I'm not saying you're not going to have a legacy, but you're going to be remembered because the conversation we had, you're setting up your son and your grandson, and you stressed how important that is. So for me, that's a legacy. Just it doesn't have to be everybody knows it, but the fact is that because of what you're doing now, how hard you're working, and all the seeds you're planting, your son is going to be he's already in a position of success, and your grandson coming along is going to be in a position of success as well. So hey, whether it don't matter if the world know, the people who most important going to know who
Yeah,
Raul Jurado is. So,
no, 100%, man. I agree with that, Stan. That's a great way of putting it. And
so
that's true. So yeah, so that's it.
but listen, thank you for doing this because we met and we only talked for like maybe 2 or 3 minutes, but you was gracious enough to say you would do it. And because you are a businessman, your schedule is tight. So I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. And it's been an honor, pleasure. And I really did enjoy this conversation. Look, I didn't have a plan coming into it, but I got what I wanted out of it.
Perfect. Hey, thank you very much, man. I really appreciate you, and hopefully we can talk again soon.
Oh, for sure, for sure. You're not on social media or anything, so it's no.
I do Facebook and I do LinkedIn, but
Okay.
yeah, I'll send you all the information afterwards.
Okay. Well, again, thank you for doing this, and I wish you all the best, your son, your grandson, everybody that's in your family, and also the company. I'm hoping and praying that everything continues to grow for you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, sir. Have a great day.
You too. I want to take the time to thank everyone for listening to the podcast. I truly appreciate your support. You can follow me on Instagram at conversations underscore with underscore Lent. My Facebook is also Conversations with Lent. You can listen to the podcast on SoundCloud and Apple Podcasts. You can also watch it on YouTube. Again, thank you all for listening. Have a great day.